everybody. Welcome back to the How to Podcast series, where I bring amazing podcasters on to talk about their journey. And what I love about Rob is he not only has a great journey as a podcaster himself, but he helps many people as well. Hosted a really great group over on Alignable. I've met some great new friends because of Rob. And the one thing that I know about this gentleman, his mission in life is to connect people and put people together in connection and community. He does it really well. You could all learn something from this gentleman. And if we had more people like Rob, this world would be a better place. Rob, welcome to the How to Podcast series. Come on, he's got a tissue.
I'll get emotional. I gotta love that guy, John. Just give me a second. Oh, what a guy that Rob is. What
And the
a
crowd
guy.
goes wild. The crowd
I
goes
love
wild,
him.
right?
Oh, wait a minute. That's me. Sorry about
There you
that.
go.
Are we on? Is this working?
We're working. Yeah, we're on. We're actually recording. This is good, Rob. Welcome.
Good to be here. Thanks.
Okay, so you have this group on Alignable. That's how I came across you. How long have
Right.
you had your group on Alignable with the podcasters getting together?
Yeah, it's an interesting, that's even an interesting journey. That's been about 5 years, I guess. But what happened was it was actually a meetup in the States where people, they were actually meeting in the back of a restaurant from time to time, physically meeting up. Then we hit the pandemic and nobody met up. And then they were kind of letting it go. And I was running another pretty successful meetup for people in career development and career change. And Meetup just reached out to me and said, "You want this? I mean, it's already running. It can be yours." And so I said, okay, and sort of moved it to virtual. And then we've just been chipping away for the last 5 years. And I got a great group of people. And it is like a think tank in there. It's really cool.
You have some very interesting characters in that
Yeah.
group. I love how everyone talks to each other. I do. It's interesting because even if not everybody agrees on a certain topic or discussion, everyone just treats each other with such respect and love. And there's joking. I'm relatively new to the group. I'm getting picked on in a loving way. I just love it. My mic didn't work last time I was with you, and I was getting a lot of interesting comments in the chat and people on screen calling me out. But it was really fun, though. I make it a priority to be there with you guys. It's just a great group of people.
I appreciate that. And then that's on Thursday, the second Thursday of every month from 9:30 to 10:30 a.m.
Yeah.
And that's called the Bethesda. What are we called? Bethesda.
Yeah.
Yeah, remember, I took it over. I didn't name it.
Yeah.
Bethesda podcast meetup. Oh, people, you'll have contact information. People can reach out to me if they're interested. But it is. And if you noticed last time, what I really love is we'll get a new person or two that's got a podcast idea. And this time I was pretty cocky about it. I said, watch what happens. We're going to turn it over to the group. And it's like a popcorn machine, just lots of ideas. And we got marketers in there. We got web people in there. We got grizzled hosts in there. Basically professional guests. We got every angle of podcasting. So it's really a good group.
So Rob, talk to a podcaster who hasn't been doing podcast in community. They've been doing it by themselves, solo sport, like golf. They're just them and their golf clubs going through podcasting. They haven't thought about doing community side of podcasting. Why is it so important to do podcasting in community?
Well, I think it's important because you want to extend your network.
Yeah.
Podcasting, it's kind of, it's tough, as a guy who writes books, you can write books, but ideally you'd like people to read them. I was an author well before I was a podcaster. I wrote my first book in 93. So I know the author world and the publishing world, but you can write a blog, and I've written one for 16 years and I could do it in a closet, but I don't really extend my network. It's just me quietly writing. But podcasting, getting together with other podcasters, you extend your network and you're learning. I mean, I came up that learning curve pretty quickly. I still consider myself new at it, and I'm coming up on my 500th podcast, but I love it because there's so much to learn. And I like kind of the fellowship of it too.
Yeah. How has podcasting impacted your writing?
Well, yeah, that's a great question. It's funny when I have a guest on that doesn't connect with what I write about, it doesn't really help. But I'm not technically there to extend, to help my writing. But I think, particularly when I'm in topic, which is when I'm interviewing salespeople or professional speakers or authors, I'm always picking up ideas. And again, I've hit the extend the network button a few times, so I'll leave that one alone. It's just ideas. And you know what? I'm going to correct what I said to you. Even when it's somebody who isn't on topic, when you're a writer, and the greatest compliment you get is people say, "Where do you come up with all those ideas? How do you think of these things?" And the answer is because I'm having conversations with people.
Yeah.
And if I just stayed in my house and only talked to me, then I have a very limited knowledge base. But even when I'm working on a book or a podcast episode, and I talk to a guy like you, and I go, I'm struggling with it. This is what I'm doing. Bing, bang. All of a sudden, I'm picking up ideas. So you really got to get out of your own head and talk to other people. And I think our instinct, by the way, is the opposite. I think when we're struggling, whatever, we don't want to talk about it. But I think quite the opposite is true. We need to talk about it.
What are your thoughts around building something, whether it's an author or a podcaster, speaker like you are, but building in public, letting people see the journey of you growing and developing who you are?
Well, I can't give you a blanket statement on that one. I would depend on what it is. Like as a writer, I don't like it because I don't really. There are a lot of authors out there, and I don't want to start painting a picture and having a lot of other artists see the painting that I'm working on.
Right.
It might stimulate their thinking. Even titles. I don't typically talk about my titles a lot until I have it protected because I've got some really good titles in my head that have been taken in the past.
Yeah.
And so, and because I think they're good.
Yeah.
So, there's certain things I'll kind of hold close to me. And then others where I just want to hear other people's view. I just want to engage. Even if I'm not working on a book, I do write these things called blarticles. I trademarked that, by the way.
There you go.
It's a blog article, and I've got over 500 of those over 16 years. And that's the one where how do you come up with 500 different topics? And the answer is you better be having conversations.
Right.
It's the same with podcasts.
The one thing that somebody taught me a long time ago when I was a young man was to let life stick to you. So like your favorite sweater that just seems to pick up dirt, hair, lint, all this stuff just clings to you. And you're like, how did all this get on my shirt? Let life stick to you and be out there and talking to people, get influenced by things and let it stick to you because you never know when you're going to need that piece off your shirt, right? It's going to stick with you. So however that is for you, keeping track of voicemails, emails, some kind of note-taking device. But whenever something hits you as an author, as a podcaster, creative person, somehow capture that. You're not going to remember everything. So come up with a way to do that. What kind of tools are you using to kind of remember all these ideas as they come to you?
Yeah, I'm glad you hit me with this question. I love that question. I'll tell you, I am what I refer to as methodically observant. And the tool that I use is a journal. I've been keeping a journal for about 28 years. Actually, one of my books is just kind of a bunch of journals that I kind of sewed together. But the book was called The Way of the Road Warrior. Let me slow down. The Way of the Road Warrior, Lessons in Business and Life from the Road Most Traveled. But I keep a journal because we have so many stories and so many observations and things that just kind of passed by our windshield. And we got to slow down. I love what you said in terms of making it stick. I just needed a mechanism to make it stick.
Yeah.
And, I'll go a step further, if you don't mind. I'm going to define something for you. I am now going to provide you and your listening audience with my version of what wisdom is.
Mm-hmm.
And by the way, it came to me on a red eye. So it was one of those quasi that was for something in the morning. I don't know if I was awake or asleep, but I kind of bolted up and I went, there it is. And I wrote it down. And to me, wisdom, the definition of wisdom goes like this. It consists of three things. It consists of success, failure, and a conscious knowledge of the lessons learned from each. So the mechanism you speak about, whether it's a journal or something, it's no wonder that when we get older, we tend to get wiser. Not everybody, but we tend to get wiser. And why? Because we have so many experiences. But if we're not making them stick, to your point, then they're going by us. I don't know if we're necessarily becoming any wiser. So if all you've had is success in your life, my goodness, I'm like, wow, you're a very blessed guy. I don't know if I would necessarily call you wise, but blessed, oh yeah. If all you've had is failure, my heart goes out to you. Uh, but most of us have really a combination of both of them. And if we're using some form of a mechanism, mine being a journal, then we do have this opportunity to gain wisdom. And so I think that's what really starts making us a little bit more valuable. That's why I'm sorry to be filibustering, but when I work in with people in career transition, they're almost always between 45 and 65.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
And it's such a shame because there is ageism out there. It's not everybody, but it's out there.
Yeah.
And the sad part is, the irony is, we got a lot of people with a lot of wisdom out there,
Right.
and we're looking the other way. We're not treating them with the respect that we should. They're not asking for any more. They're just asking for jobs like everybody else. So I know I took that on a bit of a journey for you, but it's a journal for me, and it's really helpful.
Yeah. Okay. And then I think that's a great audience who could possibly become authors, could maybe start a podcast. That
Mhm.
wisdom that knowledge you have, it's interesting. I've been watching somebody on TikTok. They're in their early 60s, recently been released from their job. They're too experienced for another job, and they're in their mind, they're too old for some of these entry jobs, and they get overlooked because nobody knows what to do with them, right?
Yeah.
And it's an interesting thing to be trapped in that space where you have so much to give, but nobody knows what to do with you.
Yeah. It's a challenge for me too at this point in my career, because as a professional speaker, I am basically sourcing gigs every day of the year. I am being hired and fired in a sense every day. And and I see ageism for me as well. The only advantage I have, or I'm a very half full person, so I see it as an advantage, is I'm not asking the company to hire me. I mean, full time. And when I get, wow, you seem to be very qualified for what we're looking for, I smile and remind them, well, that all that means is I'm on sale today. They don't have to keep me on the books. They're just going
Right.
to be using me for that meeting in Topeka. So
Right.
let's get at it.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's crazy. Here's a title for you that I haven't written to, that someone will take, but I'm struggling actually containing it. But I love this term: instinct versus logic.
Hmm.
Uh, we do so many things instinctively that really aren't logical. And the conversation we're having right now
Yeah.
about not hiring older people is instinctive, but completely illogical when you really think about it. They really do possess wisdom. They're not asking for any more. Uh, I think it's almost tongue in cheek at this point to hear somebody say, but they're so qualified, we may not be able to keep them here. No, that's every employee you have there. Make it a good work environment and you'll keep your employees there,
Yeah.
even ones that tend to be a bit on the older side.
Oh,
So I just think that's a ridiculous argument. But anyway, yeah, it's kind of kooky. It's instinctive, but not logical.
so how do we take that pent up knowledge, wisdom that we've earned over the years, and then maybe release it through a podcast as an outlet, maybe to get that out there and start building community around us? And what we do can lead to all kinds of things. Speaking, writing a book, all that stuff could come later. But as a podcast, as an outlet for somebody, maybe in this situation, what would you say about just starting and getting your knowledge out there?
Yeah, the only challenge is, first of all, yes. So your answer is yes. Writers write. I don't have my. It's not exactly a poem, but I give my new writers this little piece that says, "Thinking about writing is not writing. Planning to write is not writing. Researching to write is not writing," and a few more. Writing is writing, and I think that
Mm,
falls into podcasting too.
yeah.
I think that we can think about it and plan about it and prep for it and work on graphics and whatever you want. But eventually we got to turn the mic on, skin our knee a little bit, and get that first one done and move to the second one and put one foot in front of the other and keep going. But I think we kind of overplan and overprep. You really just have to cut it loose. Look, you've got close to 600 or 600 podcasts. I'm 100 or so
Yeah,
behind you and
there you
very
go.
competitive, which
Yeah,
means I'm going to be podcasting in my sleep now to track you down.
there you go.
But our first one or two or four or five, I'm not so sure they are necessarily our best, but they were the best for that day. They were
Right.
best for that moment. I'm not ashamed of them. I'm just glad that I used that as a stepping stone to get better. So I'm answering your question by saying, turn it loose,
Yeah.
like Seabiscuit.
Yeah.
Turn it loose, turn it loose. Okay. Let's go.
Yeah.
And just know that if your best will be absolutely good enough,
Mhm.
and then you'll get better.
Yeah. One
I'll
of the
tell you a quick
things.
story, Dave.
Yeah, go. I want to hear it. Let's go.
Uh, First time I taught a program when I was at Xerox, we had these developers. They took forever to get the trainers the program, and so we're getting ready for a 2-week program workshop with 6 students, and we're getting curriculum on Sunday night for day 1. Okay, on Monday. Now, it's not like we didn't know how to teach sales, but this was a new program, etc. I didn't know what I was doing. I mean, I'm in the curriculum. I'm sort of following along. One rule in training is you never tell people, as I wouldn't tell a podcaster, this is my first one or whatever. Just do your job. But what we lack sometimes in expertise, we unconsciously make up in enthusiasm, in energy, in drive, in compassion, in empathy to our guests, etc. That class, when it finished, never knew it was my first time, didn't know any of that. They
Right.
gave me a Mont Blanc pen. It's a podcast, so you folks can't see it, but Dave can.
Mhm.
I'm showing him right now. Gave me that pen. I taught for 8 more years at Xerox that program, and I got smarter and smarter and good and better at it. Never got another pen again. Never actually got another gift again, because that group loved what I delivered. Because again, I wish I could have the enthusiasm and the energy of that first delivery from my 50th delivery. And you know where I'm going with this,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
So answering your question, somebody who's thinking about podcasting, you've got something that Dave and I don't have. You're going to have so much energy and so much drive, and you're going to work so hard that you're going to make up for the little bit of a pimple over here and
Yeah.
a dent over there. So don't worry about it. Turn it loose. Let's get it going.
Okay. Yeah. One of the things I've been using lately with people I'm talking about podcasting, this quote from Theodore Roosevelt: "Do what you can with what you have, where you are." And the
Love it.
idea is that those 3 things go together. And any
Yeah.
of those things, if you're missing any one of those, it's going to be hard for you. But again, just do what you can with what you have and where you are. That's everything. You don't need anything else to start. And what I'm finding, Rob, is I'm coming across people who are stuck in an information loop around podcasting, where they just want one more course, one more guru, one more conference, one more podcast about podcasting, which is what this is. And they just want to keep gathering information without action.
Yeah.
Right. And in that loop, they're super smart. They know a lot of great stuff, but there's something stopping from them from that action mode.
Right.
What would you, if
Right.
somebody's stuck in that spot, what would you say to get them to move into that action mode?
Well, I wish I was physically with them so I could put my hands on their shoulder and shake them a little bit. Uh, I would say what we're saying right now, which is, I don't know who this quote is, but it isn't mine. Done is perfect.
Yeah.
Done
Oh,
is perfect. It's the same for writers. I know people come up to me, always wanting to write a book, looking to write a book, been working on writing a book. How long you been working on that book? Oh, 6 years. How much you got done? I'm still on chapter 1 because they're editing and re-editing. And sometimes what happens is we write something really good, but we look at it 7 times and it starts looking stale. It's just like a presenter who's presented something a lot. Well, if it's the same audience every time, it probably will be stale,
yeah.
but it's a new audience every time. So we don't have to worry about that. Same with writing. You forgot that you're just getting familiar with it. I wish podcasters would think the same way. Just understand that done is perfect. When we write, and I've got some good books out there, they've sold a lot of copies. Done is perfect. Yeah, we get a copy edit on there, but I look at it now and go, I could have changed that. No, done is perfect. Let it loose and just understand no matter how manicured you think the first one might be, your 10th one's going to be a whole lot better.
Mm.
But you got to put on the shoes and run that race. You can't keep planning to run your race. You got to run it.
Talk about energy and personality in podcasting. I know I'm watching on your website, you jumping around with the mic. People are waving their hands. They're having a great time with you. Energy and that bringing it into your podcast so that we don't become monotone and, we're not engaging with our audience. We're just kind of phoning it in, I guess. Maybe after we've been doing podcasts for a while, how do we engage that energy again for our show?
Well, and I'm not wearing it right now, but if you ever see me on a stage, and I've got 3 million miles in the air, I've been doing professional speaking 32 years on my own and 8 more with Xerox, you will never see a picture of me without a very small lightning bolt on my lapel. Okay. And that is when I get up in the morning of the day I have to speak, it is a ritual where, I brush my teeth, I shave, and I put that lightning bolt on. And what that lightning bolt reminds me is that I call it the great equalizers. I can't fail today. As long as I remember my enthusiasm and my energy, I cannot lose. I already know that. But I go through that ritual because when we do something a lot of times, sometimes we do forget. If you ever watched hockey, it's a classic example. I'll see my beloved Washington Capitals play, and tickets aren't cheap. I'll go see them, and they'll, lose 3-0 or whatever. They're a good team, but they'll lose. And when they lose, a lot of times you hear athletes say, "You know what? We just didn't show up today. We just, I don't know. We seem to be uninterested. We just didn't bring our A game." I'm always sitting there going, "Huh? Tell me next time so that I don't show up either." When we speak professionally, you're as good as your last presentation.
Right.
I try and think of that as my podcast too. I'm as good as my last podcast. And that doesn't depress me or scare me. That puts juice in my system. That energizes me to say, it's right now, just like the conversation we're having. I didn't want to phone in a conversation with you.
Mm-hmm.
This is my signature and your signature. But I think a ritual of some sort, you've just learned mine, is important because do something enough and you can, it sounds impossible to me, but I think you can forget to really show up with all you got. And I don't ever want to do that.
Rob, what was the origin of the lightning bolt? Where did that idea come from?
Here's another piece of information that you'll be able to tell your children and your grandchildren and your children's children. We've all heard of Michael Jackson and his album, The Thriller.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Well, 2 years before that album came out, I was I think 22. I was 23. I was getting into training. I always liked a lightning bolt as just sort of as a symbol because I always was a person I was an actor for a while, just a person with energy. So 2 years before the album came out, I got my first training job at CSC, Computer Sciences Corporation. I taught flood insurance. 2-day, 16-hour seminars to claims adjusters, actuaries, and underwriters. Fascinating group of people with a really terrific topic. But I learned how to make things interesting. And I referred to myself and called myself the Thriller. And I have a lightning bolt little name thing on cloth that I would flip over the lectern, and I would tell these people, we're going to learn about flood and have the greatest time you ever heard if my name isn't Rob the Thriller Jolles. And so that's how sort of the lightning bolt came around. Now, I've kind of since lost the name Thriller. Michael Jackson just sort of stepped on that one. But I know people who've known me, decades ago who would say, "Hey, how's the Thriller doing?" And I know who they're talking to.
There you go. Okay. Well, I like that. I think that's one thing maybe the podcasters and speakers and authors maybe don't lean into is their personality as much. Maybe the topic is what they want to talk about, which is great. We want to help people with what we're doing with our content, but there's the personality side of you. I actually had somebody reach out to me, Rob. This is a very interesting email. And the email basically said, "Hi, my name is so-and-so. I listen to your show, but I got to tell you something. I don't listen to your show for your content." And I'm like, wait a minute. I put all this hard work into my show. They said, "I listen to your show because of you. You could talk to me about anything, and I would come and listen. You're my companion in my week now, and you can talk about anything you want. I'm just going to show up for you because you keep showing up for me. So we have a relationship. I'll never start a podcast. I'm not interested in that, but I'm interested in you. So I'm showing up for you. And I'm like, I think that's one part of podcasting that we don't give a lot of credence to, is the fact that people will show up for you. Maybe the content brings them in the door, but they're going to build a relationship even if they've never met you in person, because you're showing up on a consistent basis. They're showing up to listen. There's a bond that happens over time when you have somebody in your ears and in your world on a regular basis. So that consistency piece, whatever that means for you as a podcaster, as a speaker, as an author, just being there and being public facing, I think really does help a lot.
That is absolutely beautifully said, by the way. I will tell you that if I can drop into now sales training, because that's really where a couple of my books are, and that's my bread and butter as a professional speaker. I work with a lot of financial institutions and Fortune 500 companies, et cetera. I will typically, if I hang around long enough, I will work in the phrase somewhere that knowledge is a bit overrated. And it shocks them, but I actually have them list, tell me about the greatest salesperson you ever met. Could it be a parent, an uncle, a friend, a sister? I don't care. Close your eyes. Do you see him? Can you see him? Okay, describe them to me. And tell me about it. And they're almost like they're very knowledgeable. Okay, we put it up there. And I tell them, on Family, we were playing Family Feud. You got the number one answer. But to me, that part is a bit overrated. I don't say that it doesn't belong on the list. I just think that sometimes when we're trying to persuade others or communicate with others, we think that overwhelming somebody with our knowledge is what really carries the day. And you've just told a story that reinforces something that I believe in, same as you, which is it's a part of it. If you didn't have a knowledge base of some sort, you would lose that audience. But at some point, it's kind of a given. We know you're smart on this. We're listening because we're bonding with you. And as a speaker, I want my audience to bond with me desperately.
How do you do that from stage, Rob? How do you bond with an audience?
Well, it's very difficult with a keynote. So humility. Because really it is, when you do a keynote, you could have 300-400 people out there. You're going for maybe an hour. I do bring a few on stage here or there. You go to the website, you see sort of I'm messing with people, but really 50 of the 60 minutes is kind of me. So I think just being humble and stepping away from the lectern and wandering into the audience, there's certain moves that we can make that really soften up that appearance. But it's the workshops where I really have an opportunity to bond.
Right.
And it's if you don't mind, I know we're going into the workshop world here a little bit, but for me, it's not rushing the opening, starting something it's very interesting, but not rushing to have everybody want to be my friend. You'll see people, there's almost a desperation to it. I've seen speakers get angry because the audience isn't responding to them quickly enough. Easy. When its time has arrived, the audience will come to us. We don't need to go to them. But the last piece is for me, and I train speakers, is a sneaky little move we make. When we take breaks, we're working. You're breaking. You're going to the restroom. You're having a soda, coffee, whatever you feel like. We're not running out of that room. Actually, that's our opportunity to connect here, have a conversation there. An introverted person sometimes won't want to talk in a workshop, but they'll talk during the break. I can connect with people in the air in times where you don't really notice that I'm connecting. So there's a method to my madness.
It's a little hard to do in a virtual world with an audio podcast, but for you on stage, reading the room is probably really important to see how people are interacting with the content, interacting with you, the message. And you can tell if people are focused on their phones, if they're walking out of the room. Those are indicators. I'm a musician. I'm up on stage playing with my band. People get up and leave. That's feedback. Just so you know, everyone, they're leaving. So there's something that's not connecting with them. But in a virtual world like podcasting, where we can't see our audience in person like we can on stage, what kind of lessons can we take from reading the room like you do as a speaker that we can maybe apply to a podcaster to help us connect better with the audience that's listening later when we do our recordings.
Yeah. Well, one way, believe it or not, isn't in the podcast. It's how we write up the podcast, I think. And I've been learning this the hard way. Again, there's so many lessons that we're learning, you and me.
Yep.
And one of them is I use LinkedIn a lot to promote my podcast. And I've always whined that, my followers don't talk. My followers, are very stingy with their likes. And then I had a couple really good write-ups and some very good guests. And magically, there were a lot more likes and a lot more comments and shares and things. And I had to look in the mirror and go, hey, maybe it's not them. Maybe it's you. Maybe you need to put in a better hook in the beginning. And that means in writing too, when I'm promoting it. But hook in the beginning is really important. What's the first 3 sentences out of our mouth?
Right.
It matters. I mean, I can see it, how many people are just digging into the podcast from what I'm even physically writing to get going. Yeah. And then how long do they stay? So listen, like you, I'm a work in progress, but I kind of like that. I don't think we're ever going to be finished learning how to be great at what we do. So the moment we do, we think we got it all, time to hang up the microphone.
Right.
So I'm still in development, but I think that's it. The tough part for me, and let me ask you this question, okay, is warming up a guest. See, because we're caught in no man's land a little bit. I want to warm up before we speak, but a lot of times I'm going to lose some really good information because we're not recording, we're not on. Mm-hmm. So my question to you, podcast host of over 600, how dare you, is, how do you warm up a guest when you've got to get them on mic fairly quickly?
Yeah. For the most part, I do a pre-interview, and I know it's not popular with everybody, but for my Living in the Next Chapter author podcast, I typically do a pre-interview with all my guests. Sometimes I'll get somebody on, and based on their calendar, they're just not available for that. So I don't impose on their calendar to meet me twice. That's too much. So I know that going in. So I know I'm going to do my research ahead of time. I'm going to come in prepared and know where they've been, what they've talked about, what they like to talk about, and what they haven't talked about. So I had Adam Nimoy on my show, Leonard Nimoy's son from Star Trek, and he wrote a book about his dad. Now, everybody that interviewed him talked about his dad, and I could tell that he was getting, he wasn't super excited to just talk about his dad all the time, because that's what he grew up in. That's what his book was about, living in the shadow of his dad. So I wanted to talk more about him. So we brought up the fact that he was on The Big Bang Theory. He was on the show. We brought up the fact that his son plays in his favorite band that Adam listened to growing up. His son now plays guitar in that band. He got to talk about stuff that he didn't talk about anywhere else. The book was the foundation of our conversation, but we didn't dwell and overdwell on his relationship with his dad and all the typical questions he had. I came to the interview with that. I kind of gave him a heads up. This is kind of where I want to go based on what my research tells me. And he was smiling because it was something different, right?
Yeah.
Something new. So that's kind of my way of doing that, is invest in your guest as much as possible. I do like a pre-chat. The only downside I find is people get chatty in the pre-chat and then they don't do it again when we go live. Right. Because they've already told me all those stories. They don't want to tell me again. I tell them though, listen, when I come back with you on the recording, I'm going to ask you this exact same question. And I'm listening to you right now in the moment as we do this conversation, but I'm going to pretend I don't know anything that you're talking about. And I want you to tell it again. And I'm going to prompt you, if you make it a small version of the story, I'm going to prompt you to expand because I want to do this again. So I very careful not to say in the recording, well, Rob and I met, we had a pre-chat, we talked about all these great things. Too bad you weren't here as a listener. Now Rob's on the show. Hi, Rob, welcome to the show. Because then the audience is like, well, that seems selfish. Like, what about us? Like, we want to be part of this too, right? So there's a danger of doing the pre-chat, but I do like the bond that a pre-chat creates. A lot of my guests are first-time guests. They don't know anything about podcasting. They have
Right.
no idea what's going to happen. And they're super nervous. So
Right.
when I can have that time with them, either before we hit record on the same day or in advance, their shoulders drop a little bit. They realize they don't have to be perfect. They realize there's no studio audience for this recording. And if they say something that they don't want to be out in the world, we can fix it. You can see them relax. And in that moment of relax, we get better conversation, I find.
Right. Right. Yeah, that's the catch-22 I'm referring to.
Yeah.
So I love what you're doing there. Particularly, I wouldn't have loved it until you threw in giving the speech about, I'm going to ask it again. We're going to pretend I haven't asked it before. I want the whole story. My concern is that for an actor, that's easy.
Yeah.
Or someone who has some acting chops. But some people, I'm a classic introvert may struggle with that.
Right.
Because it's almost like they're not being true to themselves. I mean, so that's where I get caught. So
Yeah.
I'll give you one of my little secret weapons because I don't pre-interview. I mean, I get them on pretty fast.
Yep.
But one of the things is I'm showing, again, this is a visual podcast, but at least I'm smart enough to tell people what I'm showing you.
Thank you.
I have this coffee cup. It looks like something you'd get out of Starbucks, only it's really kind of more of a thermos. It's not paper or plastic.
Yeah.
And it is my nonverbal cue the only prep I'm giving them is, I want you to assume that we're having a cup of coffee. Okay. Yeah. We're at the Starbucks. What's the one up in Canada?
Tim Hortons. Tim Hortons.
Tim Hortons. Yeah.
There you go.
Okay. Yeah. We're at Tim Hortons. Okay. But I want them to see that. And it's subtle. I'm not saying it fixes everything, but I'm as quickly as possible driving the theme of coffee shop. And I do remind them, like you said, and anything you don't like, I got a safety net under us. We'll take it right out. Yeah. I rarely have to cut anything out. Yeah. It does take a minute or two. They do warm up. One of the most clunky questions for me is when I go, I go through a bio and go, welcome to the show. Thank you. It's like, good to be here. Yes, it is. Okay. Yeah. So anyway, I still have to perfect that transition from you're going to give me nothing after I welcome you to let's get going. And then everybody's great. But I really do look at it every time I circle and go, I need to figure out how to go. Okay. There's that bump. But yeah, I don't pre-interview because I want it fresh.
Right. Yeah, as you're explaining that, the short answer or welcome, hi, nice to be here. It feels like the old Fords. You have to get outside and crank the engine from the outside. It's like in the 20s. I get this conversation going, right? That's something we have to do. So that takes a certain skill set for you as a host. So a brand new host is maybe not have that ability to jump in and hit record and let's go. So in the early stages, having some kind of chat with a guest, like how do you, it's great when you've done as many as you have, but somebody starting today and they've never interviewed somebody on a recording before. Yeah. Any tips for them on just getting more comfortable?
Well, humor helps me a lot. But when I train speakers, and I won't keep going back into the speaker world, but I do go over 35 ways to be interesting and just to keep the interest of an audience. Yeah. And one of them is humor. So you don't have to be funny to speak or write or podcast, but something that you can do that calms them down. I don't go hi, record. There is 3 minutes or so of, welcome and nice to see you. And, I get them warmed up, but just let me think about that first. And now I wasn't really thinking, Dave. Again, a visual podcast for everyone. Wait 1 second. I have now coughed twice, but trying to do it very subtly. Okay. Well, so for somebody that's new, I would say, don't worry about what I'm saying and what Dave's saying. Whatever is going to warm you up as the host and make you feel comfortable. If you say, I just need a couple minutes, take a couple minutes. Just understand that try and slow the guest down if you can. If that's what I would do. If I'm taking a couple minutes, what's my biggest fear? They're going to launch into a great story or something. And then I'm going to go, okay, now in 60 seconds, tell it again. just don't let them launch.
Yeah.
It's a lot of it's about, have you ever done it before? Tell me a little bit more about, your experience here. So you live in Topeka. What's it like there? I'm more on the social side of my questions and off of whatever book or business or whatever they want to talk about. That's not where my questions are, which is, again, how we sell. I don't walk in and say, hi, how you doing? We got problems with your air conditioner. I want to know about the family. And so let's warm them up the way we would warm up a normal conversation, but just keep those real podcast questions in your hip pocket till we get a little bit warmed up.
Yeah. Lean into your curiosity.
Yeah.
Right? Why is this person on your show in the first place? And there's got to be a reason, right? So lean into that. Think about your audience at all times. I always encourage my guests, there's one other person here with us every time we sit down together. So how do we include them? I don't want them to be passively listening and off in the stands, far away from the action on the field. I want to bring them on the field with us. They're not nameless, faceless people. Let's include them. So I love when my guest talks to the audience as if they're actually here. So that's another little thing to think about as well. But yeah, lean into your curiosity. That'll save you whenever the conversation gets a little dry. Just be curious. I had a guy on yesterday, an author, and asked him where he's from. He says, I'm from Albuquerque, New Mexico. And I said, is that where you're born and raised? He's like, no, I was born in Roswell. I'm like, oh, wait a minute. That's not in my notes. And then so he explained about growing there, living up there, and all the stuff around Roswell. I said, I do have to ask, are you an alien? And he's like, I cannot confirm or deny that I'm an alien. And it was this kind of moment where he could see him kind of drop his shoulders and go, okay, I feel comfortable with this guy interviewing me on this show. Now,
but then again, I would have liked the alien line on the podcast.
Yeah, it was on the podcast. It was in there.
Okay, good. All right, so that wasn't in the pre-conversation.
No, that was in the recording. I didn't have that in the pre-chat. Right.
Good. Because that is the poster child for what I wouldn't want to lose in a pre-conversation. Right. So this is a good conversation you and I are having right now, I think, because you're seeing why there is no black and white answer to the question. It's depends a little bit. But I would just say, last thing, and I learned this as a salesman again, the more the other person talks, usually the more comfortable they are talking with me. So if we're going to warm them up in any way, I would certainly remind yourself what an open question is, so we don't get into a whole lot of yes, no's, and just get them talking about anything. And you're going to see those shoulders, as you keep describing, kind of loosen up a little bit. And then we can go nice and easy into record. Even when I press record, I'm still talking to them. Right. I learned that when I was filming instructors, when we would go, all right, it was the week class is over. This is the test to see if you're going to be a trainer for Xerox. Okay, hit record and go. No, people would freak out. So I always had, when we were recording, I'd always say, okay, Larry, go ahead and hit record. Now, Mary, tell me a little bit about, but we weren't starting yet. I just wanted to get through the clunkiness of the record button has been hit. So I do like getting a little bit, I'll record a little earlier. Not that it's going to the podcast, just so there isn't that formality of, and now the recording has begun.
Yes. Yes. I like that. That's great, Rob. Okay. So I could talk to you all day. You know that. And I love your group. I love the people in your group. I think community is a good representation of the leader as well. Because people are identifying with you and what you're doing with the group and how you facilitate the group. You bring a lot of great people into this group on Alignable and stuff. I love it. It's really great to meet with these people. So I want to talk about that quickly before we go head out the door, but as well for your speaking and your books and all of the things. Where do we go, Rob, to stay in touch with you? It's so much fun having you on the show.
Well, I appreciate that. Easiest way to kind of stay in touch with me is just website, JOLLES.com. And there you'll see articles. And there you'll see podcasts, and there you'll see me yapping and jumping on a stage and books and things like that. Like I said, I've been at it for 32 on my own. This website better be a fairly well-developed website. But really, anything you want to know about me can typically be found right there. And so, it's easy. There are all other social media stuff. I really like when people reach out to me on LinkedIn, by the way. Rob Jolles on LinkedIn. So that's another place.
Okay. And I'll give the mic to you, Rob. You take us out. For the person listening, a speaker, an author, a podcaster, creative person, they want to share their message with the world. What's one thing that we can put into practice this week to further our message and reach our audience today?
Make sure we understand your question. What's one thing that will further our message today?
Right. Yeah, we can do right now. We can go right now and start doing it.
Well, I'm a big implementation guy. We can talk all you want. I studied procrastination one time, and I learned something that was very interesting. I always thought it meant you were lazy. It doesn't. People who procrastinate are not lazy people. They're people who just refuse to prioritize the important things that they really need to get at. So I would say, shut that inner voice down. It keeps it's got you wired up with imposter syndrome and all sorts of nonsense. And don't listen to the bully in the brain, as I call it, and put one foot in front of the other and just jump on in. Jump on in as a podcaster. I can honestly say to you that in my 32 years in business, it's probably been the most enjoyable thing I've ever done is podcasting. I've done a lot of stuff. There's so many benefits. Play this podcast back and you'll hear plenty of those. But when I say implement, I mean, don't stand on the sidelines. If you just heard a nice talk and you laughed a little, then as far as I'm concerned as a guest, I failed you on your show today. I would love for people to say, you know what, I'm going to start implementing. And maybe the first implementation is I don't know where you are on your journey, but knock a domino over. In other words, get it going and stick with it and write down those goals so that you can put a check mark by those goals and join us in this podcast pool. The water's nice and warm.
Excellent. All right. And everyone go grab a lightning bolt, stick it on you, and let that be a reminder of great things ahead. Rob, thank you so much for taking the time to be here. I appreciate it.
You bet. The thriller has enjoyed the conversation.
Thriller is out, everyone. Thanks, Rob. Hey, thanks for listening to the podcast all the way through to the end. I love having these great guest co-hosts on the show to share their podcast with you. You have some homework to do. And what I'm asking of you is to go check out our featured guest co-host today. Go over and listen to their podcast. The links are always in the show notes. And I'd love for you to go and give them your love and support. And I think if we can all do that for each other, podcasting will be a lot more fun for all of us. So it's time to do what you've asked others to do for you. It's time to do for this guest co-host. Links in the show notes. Go over and check out their show and leave them a review, do the follow, go listen to their episodes in full, the entirety of an episode, which again shows to the apps that it's a good podcast because you're going there and you're staying to the end. It's probably one of the best ways you can help a podcaster grow their audience and be shown to more people is by simply going and listening wherever you listen to the very end, like you're doing right now here. This is the perfect way to signal to wherever you're listening on, this is a podcast worth promoting. And all of the apps want you to stay on as long as possible. So go over and listen to our guest co-host episode and leave them some feedback. If they have a buy me a coffee, send them a coffee. If they have a speak pipe, send them a voice message. If they have an email, send them an email. If they're on Instagram, send them a direct message. Do something to support our guest co-hosts. They've given up their time to be here with you, to be here with me, and we can give that back to them with time and attention, our love, our support. Thank you for doing all that for me as well. Here on the How to Podcast series, we'll talk to you soon for our next episode.